Hello and welcome to Infinity. I'm Charlie Seraphin. For the next half hour, we'll explore the world of the Tibetan Lamas through the eyes of the first Westerner to study under His Holiness, the Karmapa. Ole Nydahl was born in Denmark. While researching his doctoral dissertation, he traveled to Nepal on his honeymoon in 1968 and encountered Tibetan Buddhism. Ole Nydahl is now a Lama, a master of yogis, is the author of Entering the Diamond Way, My Path Among the Lamas, and a new book, The Way Things Are. It's a return visit to Infinity. Welcome back, Ole. What is a Lama?
Well, Lama, what is it? There are different definitions. The meaning of the word is highest mother, La and Ma, and it means somebody who has the same compassion for all beings that a mother has for her only child. But practically, of course, it means somebody who is grounded in the teachings of the Buddha, especially the emptiness teachings, and who can transmit an experience of the potential of the mind. Somebody who can create confidence in people and give them a feeling of their inner potential, their inner powers.
Why is Nepal a holy place? Is it a holy place?
Well, it was when we went there first, Now it's a very commercial place with some holy places still, with some holy sites. And what's special about it is that it's been charged out by probably 2,000 years of intensive meditation in the many Tibetan Buddhist meditation places. And that has left an energy there which is feelable even today, with taxis honking and business people coming and going and swarms of tourists everywhere.
Is the pollution of the modern world affecting that holiness, that state of being in Nepal?
No, it's not. The funny thing is it's not. Just as the destruction of Tibet hasn't really destroyed the holiness of the special sites there, because it's a very subtle energy. It's a very subtle state one can pick up anyway. But for those who are looking for extreme things, like very great peace, or very great that things aren't touched at all, there it's a little bit difficult, that's true, to tune into it. But for those who already have the feeling of what's holy and complete, it doesn't matter.
Are there other places on the planet that are similar to Nepal, or does it stand alone as one of because of the mountainous terrain, because the people there for so long were untouched by the Western world? Are there other spots on the globe that are like that or not?
Well, I'll say Tibet and Bhutan, as far as I can see, have the strongest blessing, basic blessing in the country. Especially Eastern Tibet now, Kham and Bhutan. Nepal has always been sort of mixed. There were lots of tribes, they lived in peace, and they all had confidence that there was some deeper meaning with things, and they all learned and developed, and they have some very holy places there. But I would say for a generally developed atmosphere, I'd say Bhutan and Tibet are the best today, and especially Bhutan, because Tibet has been so rapidly destroyed,
There are obviously commercial packages available where people can go on a tour with a group of people and fly there. Would you recommend that to Americans as a potential, at least, for an experience of spirituality?
I'd say it's better than not going at all. It's a lot better than not going. It's just one would have to find a guide, and one would have to try to get a little bit of time to take in the atmosphere of the places that one goes.
Is it more difficult for a Westerner to absorb the concepts of Tibetan Buddhism than it is for an Easterner?
No, actually, it's the higher the education is, the brighter the mind is, the better the karma is, and those are three things we have in the West today, or our countries wouldn't look the way they do. The better all this is, the more we'll understand, the more we'll be able to absorb. It's really universal. It's not special. It doesn't have to do with a special race or time or place or anything like that. It's just how the mind works, and the mind works at the same place, at the same way everywhere, every place.
Have the basic concepts of Tibetan Buddhism developed independently in the West at the same time, or do you have to go there or have some contact with someone who has been raised in that tradition in order to make the connection?
Well, there were quite a few years where it was most important to go to the East. I'd say till a very short time ago. Now, well, I can talk about the people I've started off myself in my years as a Lama and a teacher, and I will really say that I probably have trained a dozen people, who can really teach. One of them here is Carol Aronoff, who is with us here in the study, and There's about a dozen in Europe, especially Germans and Scandinavians, who can today really transmit teachings. And I'd say, if you meet those, it's the same as going to Tibet, and looking at all the places.
In our previous conversation, you talked about your first encounter, and you also described some really mind-boggling experiences that sort of opened your mind and your eyes to what was going on, people appearing and disappearing. Could you relate some of those incidents again and explain what it did internally to you to make you want to follow this course?
Well, what it actually taught me, what it actually did to me, was to loosen my fixed concepts of being and non-being. Buddha is always saying reality, truth is beyond all limiting ideas like materialism and nihilism, being or non-being. He said that if nothing is happening, that's the space of the mind. If something is happening, it's a free play of the mind. And the fact that something can be happening in space is the unlimited nature of the mind. And actually the strongest thing, the feeling of, stark liberation and great happiness that I had, was from seeing this fixed concept of being and non-being, all these solid boxes I'd been forcing reality into for so long, just see that happily disappear and leave an enormous open space with great possibilities. And my teacher is perfect, he's really perfect. His name is His Holiness the Karmapa, and he's the first incarnate Lama of Tibet. And he sees you, and he sees all your past lives, everything that's possible now, and sees everything that can happen in the future. And when he saw me, he knew that I needed a big hammer, on my head, because I had a big ego. And that's what he used. He touched the top of my head and the top of my wife's head at the same time, and we looked up, and he became bigger than the whole sky, and he was radiant like 1,000 suns at the same time, and we were like shaking all over, and we just came out, we didn't know where we were and what had happened to us. And that was what turned us on, because that was more than any other experience we'd ever had. We say, wow, he's got 2 arms, 2 legs like us, he's sitting there. If he can learn it, we can. That's how we started. That's how we really got into it.
Since you had that initial mind-opening experience, do those types of experiences continue today? It may not be as necessary because you are more educated in the ways of the Lama than you were early on. But are there still things that are happening to you and to those around you?
Yeah, actually, as I say in my book, Entering the Diamond Way, then during the 4.5 years we spent in the Himalayas learning and training and so on, I saw Buddha aspects several times. And this time also, we're just back from Tibet, at the main place of the Karmapas, where the 16 Karmapas have been staying since 1110. There, late in the night, I woke up, I turned around my sleeping bag. I was invited to live in the high Rinpoche room up on top of the building, something very unusual. And I turned around there and I looked right into the face of the local protectors. I saw a whole bunch of energy forms there, and I wasn't asleep or anything, I really felt the focal energies of the place. I saw it very, very clearly. And I felt, of course, I reacted like I always do, tears in my eyes, and so happy. I don't know where to put myself, and so thankful, so immensely thankful that they'll come to a blockhead like me, and show themselves to somebody like me, right? Really, really very thankful, and I really felt a push. I really felt a blessing that's working today also.
The local protectors are the resident spirits of that place?
Yeah, the resident protective energies of the place. This one was called Xingchong. Xingchong means protector of the land. It's a very, very powerful one, looking a little bit like a dog's face, and his whole retinue, his whole energy field was around him. It was an amazing experience.
How do you, other than in interviews like this, how can you share that type of an experience with people? Let's talk about that one individual that we know is listening to the radio right now, and they say, I have lived X number of years, I'm 50 years old, I have never had an experience that comes anywhere near that. How can that translate for them through your experience? Is there a way that they can achieve something of similar nature?
It should begin by the way that they get confidence that the potential is there, that the possibility is there. And then there is an uphill struggle, of getting into a mental discipline and working, and really it doesn't work without it. And then at a certain time, everything is a gift. After a certain time, the little man saying why, he falls off the car, and the little man saying how falls off the car, and then everything is actually a gift. One just walks with big eyes, from one situation to another, and it's all fantastic and it's all a gift. But it takes a bit of work to get there. It's not so fast.
How much time is spent? You had the advantage of having the direct exposure to this ancient tradition, but for someone who is landlocked in the United States and doesn't have the ability to go and spend 4 or 5 or 8 or 10 or 12 years with a Lama in the East, how can they find these teachings and how can they expose themselves to this way of life?
I'd go to, for instance, our Marin meditation center with Carol Aronoff, and I would get some of the books, I would get some of the basic teachings and so on, and then I would actually start doing the practices while expecting one of our Rinpoches to come by, or maybe myself to come back again, which I hope to be in February, and then, we'd work on from there. But it is a question, from the moment one enters a stream, then many things start happening in our subconscious, many impressions start working, and so it's really a question of getting into the stream as soon as one can.
How much time is involved in meditation, and what type of meditative techniques are involved?
Well, it's what's possible, the time is what's possible. I've been in a new town every day for the last 15 years and made 100 meditation centers for our school of Buddhism, for the Kajupa, for Milarepa's school of Buddhism. So for me, I have to meditate doing 120 miles an hour down the Autobahn in Germany and stuff like that. That's where I have to be aware, and keep a Buddha on the top of my head while zigzagging in and out among the cars and stuff like that. That's where I have to meditate, right?
So you don't need a purple pillow and go to the top of a mountain for a week to be able to do that?
No, it would be nice, of course, but I don't have much time for it. My wife has more time, She's in Nepal now. I give her a good life. She can go and do a lot of things.
Could you give us an update on your perception of the state of spiritual awareness in the world?
Well, I'll just say a little bit about the meditation. The other half of the question you asked, Tibetan Buddhism uses a very special technique called the building up and the uniting phase, where first we meditate on a certain form of energy and light which represents our enlightened potential. We use the mantra to activate it. We dissolve it in light and mix it into ourselves again and again till the seer, the thing seen, and the act of seeing, subject, object, and action really become one. And this state of union, is like the goal, is enlightenment, is the full development of our mind. And then to your other question, what was how the mind of the world is today? I'd say friendly and confused and sort of curious. Basically, traveling. I travel around the world every year. And I always hear about all the bad things happening, and I don't know who is doing it because I just meet a lot of nice people everywhere. But people are confused, and they are too easily led. They are much too easily led, they're much too easily cheated, and they much too easily climb up a tree with no bananas or anything in it because they've been given false information. And I see things, as, very strict, religions having holy war, and very limiting systems like communism and so on. I do see those as dangers. I really do. Not dangers in an offensive way, but dangers in the way that they harm a lot of beings and block their potential and so on. I'd like to see a bit less of that. Holy wars and stiff extreme religions and limiting social and political systems.
With so many people proclaiming themselves as messengers of God in this society, even in the so-called enlightened United States, where we are relatively well-educated and we are exposed to an awful lot through the media and radio and television, newspapers, magazines. We see a lot of things. We should be somewhat skeptical. There are constantly, every day, there's someone new coming out as proclaiming himself or herself to be a messenger of God. How can we be discerning when these people come forward and
check them again and again? It's the only thing you can do. First, you should see, is there a real transmission there? Is it somebody who cooked up his system, his own charismatic system, a few years ago, somewhere, maybe with the help of some advertising people and stuff like that, and some money people, Or is it a question of a really old transmission which surely for hundreds or thousands of years have really helped beings to develop? And there I would take the security of the big brand, you know. I mean, I'd buy the oil with the big brand name on it because, you know, you can be more sure of that, right? And I would, you know, and I'd also look at the teacher himself and I would see, does it work for him? Is he really capable of making himself happy? Because if he can't make himself happy, what can he do for me? I always equalize highest wisdom with highest compassion, with highest joy, you know, and so on. And you know, somebody should really clearly have that. More than personal wisdom, you know, and a lot of joy and a lot of active compassion. And if they have that, I'll consider him as a possible teacher, you know, or whatever. But if there's no clear lineage in transmission and you can't know, then, you know, what can you do?
Is there a competition among, I want to say, right ways or or possible ways? If we're all seeking the same end, the happiness and truth, is there a competition? Buddhism, Hinduism, Mohammedism, Christianity, Judaism?
There probably is, you know, but it really shouldn't be. I mean, all religions are really like medicine, and their only meaning is getting people well. And people need different medicines. And I'll tell you, for instance, Buddhism is very famous, and you know, for the fact that it's not proselytizing. We never proselytize. And some people say it's because we're arrogant. We think we're the only ones who are smart enough to understand the truth. So they say they're just arrogant. They won't go on the street. They won't stand with a sign saying the end is near. They won't put up posters where my guru is the best or whatever, right? But it's not arrogance. It's just simply that we believe that when people are mature, they've reached a certain level of maturity, they'll come by themselves. And if not reached that level, you know, better stay off them, you know, because if the hat doesn't fit, you know, nobody has benefit. So we do, you know, we just say when the water is there, the swans will come, and when the flowers are there, the bees will come, which means we give an offer, and that's all we do. And then people come if they want, and they don't come if they don't want. And if they find something else, we are happy because we have no problems with them then, you know. Then
has that approach affected the world?
The Buddhist, sure. I mean, we have 1 billion people who seem to find growth and meaning in life through the teachings of the Buddha. We have 1 billion. It's probably the biggest religion. I think it is.
Many Westerners entered the world of Eastern mysticism through the drug culture, or at least they thought they did. What happened during those early days? What was going on?
I can say it from Denmark. Denmark is quite a special place, you know, in Europe, because it's a crossing of the rationalist Central European, German, Polish, you know, Alpine cultures, and the empiricist English culture. And that means, you know, with that crossing, we probably have a bigger percentage of original types in the Danish, you know, special types, you know, like little odd, little interesting, you know, special individualistic types than anywhere else in Europe, I think. And we actually got the whole drug culture very early. Well, a bit later than the US, you know, we have this habit in Europe to blow everything up every 20 years in a major war, and then we have to build it up again, right? So, I mean, it took a little while. But we were about 5, 6, 7 years behind, for instance, the West Coast, behind Huxley and Alan Watts and, you know, Ginsberg and the whole crowd over here, right? But when it came in a very interesting way to Europe, and especially to Denmark. It came in the form of a very, very solid group of about 30 people who were already interested in expanding consciousness chemically back from 63. I started myself in 61, just when I came out of the army, and I was completely sure that we'd create the chemical paradise now, and everybody would be brothers, and all problems would be gone, you know, that it would really be part. We really believed in it. And of course Huxley, where I wrote my PhD, you know, he did the same thing, and all the good philosophers and psychologists at the time said, now we have the chemical way to have the experiences that the mystics used to, you know, treat themselves badly for during years. You can have in 8 hours now, you know, very easily, right? So we all believed in that. But the results were not very good. You know, I'm sort of a family man. I like my friends a lot. I do everything for my friends. And out of those 40 people we started with in Copenhagen at that time, we are maybe now 5 who are alive today. And it was just too expensive. And it wasn't because people died from anything special. It was just every time we take a drug, then there's no drug in the world which can make us happy. The only thing it can do is it can take from our subconscious impressions that would otherwise have matured during a long period of time and crash mature them, in a very, very short time, like 8 hours of total ecstasy on LSD or something like that, very, very quickly. But then afterwards there's nothing in the bank, and that's for the next couple of weeks or months you hang around a bit like a vegetable because the subconscious impressions have been used. And if you do it for too long, too many years after each other, you end as a burned out space cases, I think they call them here. You just have less pushing you. You have less human karma. You have less energy in your subconscious that's forcing you from one experience into the next. And one day then, you die because there's nothing left to keep you here.
Has that speeded the evolutionary process? If we talk about past lives and living through experiences to get on to the next level, if you speed it up through drugs and you have all of these experiences and you die at a younger age than you might have, can you go on to the next level in the next life faster? I'm sure that was a goal for some people.
That could have been. I really don't think so. I think most people who die on drugs go to ghost realms. I really think so, because the craving is so strong and the confusion is so strong. I think if it isn't a very clear mind, then one can have quite a long time of, intensive craving, ghost-like craving, and I really see nothing good in drugs, I must admit that. I believed in it myself, and I tried it so I can allow myself to speak. I'm not just a greenhorn who doesn't know. I do know. I spent 9 years of my life experimenting with it. I really do know, right? And there's nothing there.
Is meditation is it a shortcut? Not in the same sense if drugs were an instant fix. Is meditation a shortcut to this evolutionary process?
Well, the special thing about meditation is that it actually that it does something very special to the mind. It gives us a chance to work with the whole mind. Usually if we think there's just one aspect, like the aspect of name and form is active. But meditation, if we rest in the essence of the mind itself, then the mind is there as a totality. The intuitive, the memory, the creative, all the different functions, are really there. Everything is there. And if we rest in that essence of the mind, then the veils will very easily fall away and the radiant, clear space of the mind will radiate through, and that is wisdom, that is enlightenment. But I'll have to arrest you for a moment on the evolutionary thing. In Buddhism, there is clearly an evolution of the bodies, which you can see from the Neanderthal or the Peking man up till now. Sure, there's an evolution of the bodies, but there is no evolution in truth. Truth is timelessly and at all places totally the same. The question is just if in one incarnation we are more capable of recognizing it or not. If we experience more the mirror, or if we experience more the pictures and the veils and the dust in the mirror, that's the difference. I mean, truth cannot be bigger and smaller. It cannot be more or less. If it could, it wouldn't be true. It wouldn't be absolute. It'd be limited. So that is at all times and places the same. It's just a question of how capable we are of recognizing it. And if we spend a good life, we'll be able to recognize more in our next body that we get. And if we harm others in this life, we will be capable of experiencing less in our next life and therefore have more confusion and suffering. That's all.
So is there no potential for spiritual progress? Can we look at one age and not advance from that age to another in spiritual terms?
Sure. Relatively, we do advance, because we see more and more or less of that which is absolutely true. But the absolute essence underlying it all, that which we are getting, this cannot be changed. A truth that could change is not very true, and you can't believe it. And a state of enlightenment you could fall out of again, what kind of enlightenment is that, right? That's why in Buddhism it's always the seer, the thing seen, and the act of seeing, subject, object, and action. Those come together and become one thing.
3-part question directed toward Buddhism. Who is God? Where does he live? And what does he do?
We don't have any gods in Buddhism. We have truth, we have Dharmakaya, we have the open potential space of mind and of all things. We don't have any creator God, we don't have any punishing or judging God in no way. So I'd say God exists in people's minds. They create the idea because they need a father image, they need somebody to tell them what to do and what not to do and so on. And it's useful for many people, so it's good. But it's not useful for a Buddhist. And we don't use the word either, we use the word of truth. And the reason is that if we use any word that's flawed with any kind of duality, then, that obstructs our way of seeing. If you say God, then you think self, or me. If you think self, then you think other. If you say me, then you think you. I mean, all the different words which imply a counter something, cannot be used because the mind contains and is all things. And that's why we use the word mind. We use the word mind because you can't have any wrong ideas about it. The Zen people say no mind because there's nothing which can be found. We say mind because there is an experience. Something is experienced, even though no experiencer is found as a certain thing or substance at some time and place. But really mind in both places is exactly the same. It's the open, it's that space which makes everything possible. It's that radiant clarity which can know and be aware. And it's that unlimited essence which hinders and blocks nothing. This is mind.
How was it that Buddha came to represent truth?
Because he is not a person or a man, he is a state of consciousness. He is a state. Buddha in Sanskrit means awakened, and the Tibetan word is even clearer, Song-je. Song means purified, like a mirror with no dust on it anymore. Je means fully matured, brought to maturation, fully opened up. And this state of Song-je, of purification and full development of the mind, that is the goal, and that is timeless. It's all-pervading. It consists of what we call Dharmakaya, or the state of truth, which means basically that space is information, that which is between us right now is really potential and information, not something dead or lacking, but something which contains wisdom and can at any time be experienced, can at any time develop into one thing or another. Then it's Sambhogakaya, or the state of joy, meaning that it plays with itself. This space plays with itself. It expresses pure forms of energy and light. It expresses aha experiences and clear insights inside ourselves. And then it's active compassion. It finds fitting parents at right time and place, unites with the fertilized egg in the womb of the mother, and comes out here as somebody with the potential to teach, to show beings the essence of their own nature, the essence of their own mind, and thereby set them free. So
are enlightened minds born enlightened, or must they grow to become enlightened?
Well, it depends. Some have reached very high levels in former lives, and that means that in this life they just have to have a pointing out instruction, and somebody has to say, listen friend, this is what you forgot since the last time. And then they have to train their bodies so they are capable carriers of enlightenment. That's like the Karmapas, the highest incarnate Lamas of Tibet. He remembers everything, all past lives. He knows what happens in the future, everything. I've been able to check him so often, test him so often, and it's really true. So that's one kind, right? I mean, that's the highest of the highest. And then there are other people, who just die with a great motivation to benefit beings and so on, and for that reason they become good healers or scientists or something like that in this life. And then there is a third group, which is actually already liberated but not really enlightened, and they know everything is like a dream, and they don't really get caught by things, but they also don't have the highest realization. They're sort of in between.
This is Infinity. Remember to keep your mind open and listen to your heart. I'm Charlie Seraphin. Thank you for listening.